And I know it always takes a little while to like buffer up to showing people stuff. I don't know why, but it always happens.
Hi, everyone.
Yes, hello, hello. Like I said before, it always takes a little while to buffer up, but I think hopefully people are going to start coming in. We are going to be discussing the third book in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. I forgot which book we were on, which is Life, the Universe, and Everything. So that'll be very exciting. I have the whole thing right here in case I need it, but I also listen to it on audio, so I don't even know if I'd be able to pull up a page or a quote if we need it. So it's there for decoration.
And I finished it about 10 minutes ago, so it's so fresh in my mind.
Well, I was just going to say, you might understand and like remember more than I do, because I listen to it on audio on my drive to and from Legoland, which I was really into it actually, but I feel like that was like 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. And so I've already read like 5 other things. And I was like looking up the summary before this live to be like, did I forget anything that I might want to talk about? Is there anything here? So we'll see how this goes. So
I always
first,
feel like
yeah.
I keep meaning to make notes and then I just forget.
Well, see, I'm not a big annotator. I never make notes except for maybe if I'm like reading something on ebook, because it's very easy to just sort of highlight little things. And so yeah, I always feel like I did not complete the assignment well enough for when we come to like live discussions of things, because I have to like try to remember. Note taking would be amazing. I don't do it.
I'm like, I should just get a notebook and just be like, okay, this is the book. Here's like top points that I want to discuss. But every single time I just don't.
Or
And
like
I'm
the
like,
characters. One of the summaries brought up like Prack, which we will get to in a little bit. Hello, Ren. We were
Hello.
just starting to talk about the fact that we think we should have taken notes on this book before we came to the live.
That's true.
We were just talking
Lot of
about
stuff.
that. Like, I never annotate, so like I just don't take notes. And then Ashley just finished the book, and so I feel like she's probably going to know a little bit more than I do right now. But
I wouldn't count on it. Like me being like, I have to finish.
well, let's start with, I guess, rating. The rating of the book. Whoever wants to start with that. I guess I'll start. Okay. I liked it better than Restaurant at the End of the Universe. I will say that. So I gave it a 3.5.
3.
Okay.
I keep going back and forth on my rating because I liked it less than Restaurant at the End of the Universe.
Okay.
But then like it feels like I didn't like it less enough to make it a different rating.
Well,
So
that
I'm
makes sense.
tentatively just going with a 2.
Okay.
I love how we're all kind of
Which is
middle
what I
tier.
gave
We're like,
the last one.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I guess we can really get into like maybe the differences that we saw that made it either better or worse. I know for me personally, and I know we've talked about this before in the different lives and stuff of the like nothing really has like a big plot. And I feel like especially in between the books, going from one book to the other, we're not really having a connecting plot between them that I can feel in any way. But I thought at least this third book by itself had a plot in some way. So I think I liked that aspect better. No, Ren's making
Where did you
faces.
see plot?
The whole aspect of the cricket and the like robots coming, like at least it felt like it had a through line, even if it
That's
wasn't
true.
like a big thing necessarily.
obviously I just finished it 10 minutes ago, but I literally do agree with that. I do like the fact that there was more plot in this one with like the Cricketers, because it was like at the very start of the book and then it continued all the way to the end
Right,
before
yes.
the epilogue. And I feel like, I know we're not talking about the epilogue just now, but like I feel like that was a completely different story. really kind of in itself. So in terms of like the main book, I feel like it actually had something that was actually connecting it. But there was times when I was like, what's the point that's happening here again? I'm a bit confused about why this is happening. I felt like there was a plot, but there also wasn't enough plot. Does that make sense?
No, it really, really
So much
does.
sense.
Want to say hi to everybody that's showing up here. Hello, hello, hello. Haven't read any of the books. That's fine. I feel like everybody's going to be confused in general with this, so as long as you're okay with that. But yeah, I agree with the whole, like, at least this one book felt like there was some semblance of a plot in this one thing. I don't think the whole series has a plot that we can follow, like, at all. And because of that, we're going to say hi to one more person because I know they're going to be popping in and out. Liked it better than Restaurant, about the same as number one. Haven't given it a star rating yet because you just finished it. Very valid. I have definitely done that before too, where sometimes it just needs to stew a little bit. But I'm at about the same point. Liked it better than Restaurant. Personally, didn't like it as much as Hitchhikers. But I was also, because of the fact that I read this like 2.5 weeks ago, was having to look up summary stuff on like Wikipedia and everything because I completely forgot anything about this, even though we were having a discussion. And I found that this plot of this third book was actually supposed to be a Doctor Who episode. And they didn't make it into a Doctor Who episode. So Douglas
Oh,
Adams took it and made it into the third book, the whole Planet of Cricket aspect, which I think maybe is why it feels like it does have at least a semblance of a through plot line, whereas maybe not the best plot line. You never know. A lot of that kind of stuff is cheesy. But I was like, that was an interesting fact to me, at least, because it was supposed to be something
so
completely
cool.
different. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't
I
know if
never knew
he
that.
was I don't know if he was a writer on the show or like how that really connects, but they decided not to use it at that time, and so he decided to put it into the Hitchhiker stuff. Yeah, I
So
thought that was
cool.
interesting.
Mm.
Still not reading them, but kind of cool.
So valid.
Yeah.
I think the reason I kept thinking there wasn't much of a plot was like as you guys are talking about it, I'm like, yeah, there was a bit of a plot in this book, but I think I keep looking for a series plot, and
Hmm.
that's not happening. So everything just feels so jumbled, and I'm not a fan of that.
No, I
On
completely agree. No, go
on
you go.
that note, oh
Hmm.
sorry.
No, go go go.
I was gonna say on that note, I actually feel like even though I agree there isn't like a series sort of plot, but I
Hmm.
did like the fact that on this one it kind of brought in parts from the previous books.
Yes. Okay.
So I actually kind of liked that aspect. I was slowly bringing it in. I mean, it's not an overall sort of plot, but we were slowly getting tiny bits from the other books. For me, I was like, okay, finally something that
True.
actually makes us feel like it's actually together
Hmm.
rather than just completely separate and just with the same characters. So I agree, but I'm like hoping there's going to be more of stuff from previous books coming into
Hmm.
the next ones.
Yeah, I think that as
Mm.
well. I think they were more like cameo appearances almost in this book, but it does give me hope that maybe this is the turning point into trying to make it an actual like connected thing, because like literally book one is 100% different than book two, which is 100% different than book three. Like we start on prehistoric Earth in book three, which is where we ended in book two, but it was basically just like 4 years has passed and then they go somewhere else. Like it didn't feel like there was a reason for it, but I was
Yeah.
very interested in the whole, well, they landed on prehistoric Earth at the end of book two, and it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Or like Slarty Bartfast. I completely forgot who he was supposed to be when he showed up in book three. I was like, who is this?
Mm.
It's the guy that makes
Mm.
planets in book one. And when I eventually got that, I was like, oh, okay, interesting. He makes the fjords. I can understand this guy, I guess, a little bit more, but he just sort of showed up out of nowhere. And I was so confused for a second. I was like, what is
Mm.
going on? Felt like this one was supposed to end the series, but there's two more. I mean, That's possible. It was supposed to be like a trilogy or something originally, right? And then it's like a trilogy in 5 parts, but then we also have the Owen Colfer book, which is book 6, if we eventually want to do that, which I'm actually curious
Mm.
now just 'cause I know personally I like Owen Colfer's writing, and I'd be very curious to see what a book from him is supposed to do to this series. But
That
yeah.
would be cool to see the differences in their writing because, like, Douglas Adams just has this, like, absurdity, like, that's
Mhm.
going through everything. And, like, I guess I'm wondering, like, is that Douglas Adams' thing, or is that just, like, the thing he was doing for Hitchhikers?
Yeah, and I haven't personally checked out, like, the Dirk Gently or anything like that, so I have no other
Mm.
comparison for this author, but I know Owen Colfer, at least everything that I've read by him, has not been absurdist, so if it's supposed to be part of this series, I would be interested in that because I've read the Artemis Fowl series, which is a middle grade fantasy with, like, fairies and, like, a hidden fairy world, which
Mm.
I love, like, one of my favorites, and then he's written, like, a short story for Doctor Who, and stuff like that, so, like,
Mm. Cool.
in the same sort of vein, I guess, sci-fi wise, because of the fact that book 3 was supposed to be a Doctor Who thing. Um,
Mm.
yeah, it'd be interesting to see it, even if we don't continue after book 5. I might just try it anyway, just to see because I like that author.
I
Yeah.
feel
What?
like
Mm-hmm.
Douglas Adams waffles a lot, and I have no clue what he's talking about half the time. I'm
Mm,
just like it's not even the fact that he waffles because he does waffle a lot. Like I feel like half these books, I'm like I don't understand what you're talking about. But there's so many
Mm.
things. It's like the same sentence, like again and again and again and
mm.
again. And there was like
Yeah.
2 parts, and because it's so fresh in my mind, it just so bugs me because there was like 2 separate parts, but it was just repeating the same words for like a whole paragraph at 2 separate occasions, and I was just like, I swear to God, if I read I'm better again, I'm actually going to scream. It was like a full paragraph, and I was like, please, just any other wording. Like, anything, please. So,
Well, they had something to say.
I don't know what my dog's on. Even like before we started this live, my dog was barking. I don't know what he's doing, to be honest. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. We love the little tail in the background every so often.
Yeah, like I saw him jump down from the window and I'm like, I'm having a great time just watching your dog. Like, it's so good.
Did you, Ash? Did you read it physically? Okay, because I listened to it on audio, and I think I didn't personally think that anything was too repetitive, but at the same time, I listened on like 2 times speed, and Martin Freeman has a British accent, and I was driving. So I'm like, that could have done it. But I do think, I don't know if this anybody else noticed, and again, it could have been the way I read it, but there was less Hitchhiker's Guide inclusions in this book, right? Which I know wasn't your favorite
Yeah.
part, but there wasn't as much of
I
those like
think
extra.
there's about 3 or 4 that I can remember. I don't really remember many. I feel like there
Yeah.
was the tiny,
Mm.
tiny ones that are like a
Mhm.
paragraph, if that. And
Mhm.
then there was 2 longer ones, and I feel like that was it. I feel like it was very much them. I don't really remember too much like the guide. I only think I remember like 3 or 4 times it was actually
Right. I
mentioned.
feel like it's been less and less with each book in the series, which I usually like them a lot, but I didn't quite miss them in this one either. So that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm.
The immortal guy who goes around insulting everyone was super funny. I don't know why. It needed way more Marvin though. Yes, I did want to talk about some characters as well. So I did think it was very intriguing that the immortal guy that insults everybody was at the very beginning of the book and then showed up again at the end of at the end of the book. I can't talk today. End of the book. I'd be curious if that was just for the laughs or if it was something else. But I agree, some of the characters in the previous books were not in this book as much,
It
which
was really annoying.
could have been a good thing. Like, Zaphod was hardly in it, and I personally don't like how New York he sounds when Martin Freeman reads him. Um,
So true.
but then Marvin was barely in it either. And I know a lot of us really like him as a character.
What
So
was Trillian? Trillian's barely in it as well.
she, yeah, is not in it as much. I did like that she felt like she was more of a character in this book than Restaurant, though, because she was the one that solved the whole, like, what the planet and the supercomputer was trying to do at the end in a very smart way, I thought, because it was smarter than my brain could wrap around. So I did like that she at least felt more than just like, oh, we have a girl with a bunch of guys. Like, there's somebody here. But it was mostly
But like
just like,
she's not in it for so much of the book though.
no, it's mostly just like an Arthur book for this one.
She basically,
Yeah.
like, she speaks to Zaphod and then she's like, I'm off. And then she just disappears and she's like, I'm with Thor. And then it's like she disappears again. And I'm like, like, I feel like he added her. It feels like he added her anyway, just to have a female character there.
Mm-hmm.
What? She doesn't add really anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you were just going to add in someone for the sake of just adding someone in, maybe you should have just taken them out because she doesn't add anything. Or maybe after the first book, then being like, okay, so she's went off here, like, just then leave her, because I feel like it's just giving her nothing. And she's went from a really likable character in Hitchhikers to now I'm seeing her and I'm just like, I don't really care about your character anymore because we get nothing of substance from her anymore. Whereas I feel like in the first one, we really did.
Yeah, Jasper makes a good point here that she needs more to do, but it was a slight improvement over Restaurant, which I agree with. I feel like Restaurant was very cast focused, like we had a ton of the guys and barely anything of her, whereas this book was a lot of like Arthur specifically, and because of that we had less of everybody else, but she still feels like just being there for like having a girl there. Hello.
I feel like in my head, Trillian is like the most badass, take no nothing from anyone kind of person. But like that's just like what I want her to be. And then in the books, there's so little of her that I'm like, no, I want you to be this badass queen that I think you are. But it's just it's very disappointing that she doesn't like get what she deserves. You know.
This is when you need to go on like find fan fiction. Like is there any fan fiction out there where Trillian is the main character? Because I would be all over that. When does when does that copyright come up? Can somebody rewrite Hitchhikers, make her the main character? That'd be amazing. Because she deserves more.
One character I really liked, and I know they're the smallest side character. We have them for like a paragraph, but I really like the mattress. Like the one that was talking to Marvin. I really just like the mattress. I have no idea why, but I was like, I want more of him.
I completely forgot about that until you mentioned it. But I think that was also one of the parts where we got a little bit more of the Hitchhiker's Guide, and so it expanded it just a little bit. And I agree. I really liked that sort of aspect and the humor that went with that.
Hard
For the
disagree.
mattress. You're gonna disagree. That's okay.
I hated the mattress. I was like, I'm so bored. Why is there a mattress here? Can it leave?
No, it can't. It's a mattress.
I think I probably liked it because it was the only interaction we got with Marvin.
Yeah, it was a very small. Marvin was another character that I really wish we had more of.
I feel like the stuff that we did get from Marvin this time, I found myself not liking Marvin this time. Whereas, like, usually he's my favorite character because he's just funny in his like life is awful type thing. But this time it felt like his depression felt too serious in a way from what it had been. And like it started to get a bit serious in Restaurant where he was just like abandoned basically. But it was still kind of feeling like that in the little snippets that we got in this one. And I was like, can he go back to like the beginning where he was just like sassier than he is now? He just feels sad.
Yeah. Presley decided he needed to join.
Abandoned, like, he's been abandoned like twice because even like at the end of this one, he was also still abandoned. Like he just gets abandoned all the time. Like I'd be very depressed at this point, being like, okay, so everyone wants each other. Because even when he's like Zaphod, he's like, okay, let's go, and he's like, no, not you, and he's like, oh. cool, thanks. It's
Yeah.
always just leave him. And I'm like, no wonder he's so depressed. Like, no one clearly
Mm,
wants him there.
Well,
I
and
want
and
him.
I could be mistaken because of the fact that again, this is something that I was forgetting a little bit, but like in book 2, he was left to like cause a distraction, but wasn't he also sort of left to like here you deal with the problem in this one as well on like the ship of the other robots or whatever it was? Like not only is he abandoned, he is
Mm.
also they're like you solve it. You solve the problem now. Like I felt bad at that point too. Like not only is he abandoned, he has to fix things.
He's kind of the only character doing something. Like, I don't, I don't know how to kind of reword that, but like, I feel like he's the only person who's actually doing something. The rest of them are just sort of living life, and they're just like, oh, we'll just go with it. And they're like, but Marvin will sort it all. So it's just
Hmm.
kind of like everything just falls on
Mm.
him, and the others just kind of go like, oh well, he'll clean up the mess anyway. Like he's a robot. Like who cares? So
Yeah.
it's kind of
Mm.
annoying in that way because we're not getting much of his character either. So it's kind of like, oh, we'll do whatever we want, and then all the big stuff, just leave it to Marvin, who isn't really in this book at all. Like it's quite
That
annoying
also then
for me.
kind of feels like lazy writing because it's like the all the solving stuff, yeah, is getting done by Martin, but it's like off page. So it's like you can keep having all of the main characters do some wild stuff that doesn't mean anything. And in the end, it'll be like, oh, everything's fine. Marvin did his thing. And it's like, I'd rather see Marvin doing the things than all of
Yeah.
this wild stuff.
Yeah. We have a question here. It looks like it is specifically for Ren, but is this a case of preferring the movie to the books or neither?
I haven't seen the movie because well, there was a thing of, oh, maybe we'll do like a watch along, like once
I
we've
still
read all
think
the books.
we should. But that was why I
Hmm.
thought it was interesting because I was pretty sure you still hadn't seen the movie. Um, and
I
I
really
would,
wanted to,
yeah,
like, especially um, after Restaurant, because I think Mel said the movie was kind of like a mix up of the first two or something.
Restaurant is not in the movie.
It's not in the movie.
Oh, that's what it was.
No, so the
Oh.
movie is basically just the first book. There is some
Mm.
other stuff that happens in the movie that because we haven't finished the series yet, I don't know if it's going to include anything from 4 or 5, because there is other stuff in the movie that happens that's not in book 1. But because I haven't finished the books yet, I have no idea. But personally, I do prefer the movie to the books.
I prefer
Is
the
there anything
movie.
from this book in the movie?
Nope, nope.
Ah.
No, that's why I was like curious because I had previously read books 1 and 2. And the reason I wanted to read them was because I had seen the movie. And book 1 is probably like the first half ish of the movie, plus a little bit at the end. Like they added stuff sort of in the middle, which I was like, oh, okay, maybe that'll be the rest of the series. They just sort of added everything up. But then Restaurant is not in the movie. And I was like, okay. Never really continued because I don't really personally like Restaurant. But then, yeah, book 3, not in the movie. So now I'm curious because the 4th book is called So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. And there is a whole like song and dance with dolphins at the very beginning of the movie where they sing So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. It's great. But I'm curious if we're going to get anything from book 4 or 5 in the movie because there is stuff in there that is completely different than the first book. Like they added, I would hope they didn't just add things in there to make it a longer movie because it's a long movie. Um, we'll have to see, but I really love the movie. I've seen it like at least 10 times. So
I've seen the
much.
movie so many times, it's unbelievable. Like,
Yeah.
I adore it. But yeah, I agree, there isn't really anything from it. I was trying to think about like fight scene part at the end of the movie, but maybe it's to do with the cricketers, possibly. They kind of adapted it a little bit.
I don't
But
know. It was the Vogons again in the movie,
yeah,
and we haven't seen the Vogons really since book 1 either, and they have I feel like a slightly bigger part in the movie than what we've seen. So I don't know. I'm gonna skip to this comment really quick because it's current what we're talking about. Seeing the movie, books didn't get your interest.
that's
I
fine.
think we're all basically saying you don't have to read them if you don't want to. Just stick with the movie.
For sure.
And then we also have, I like how we got the context for the petunias in book 1. I hope that guy comes back, but I'm not holding my breath.
That was
That was
so
honestly
funny
one of my
to me.
favorite parts.
Yeah, this is the guy that keeps saying Arthur keeps killing him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Mhm.
just like, again, could be in a totally absurdist thing that never shows back up, but I think it would be definitely more interesting to actually have something else happen with that again. Because
He
It was
actually
so much fun.
made me wonder if the 24 is how many lives you have.
42?
Yeah, that one, not 24, 42. I'm wondering if
That would
that's
be
maybe how many
interesting.
lives you have. Because he goes, oh, well, this was like my last life. I had to properly beg for this one. And part of me is like, I wonder if that's connected to it because we still don't have the answer. Well, the question, rather. So I'm like, is that maybe how many,
Well, and
like,
see, now I'm curious if that is a Doctor Who thing. Like, how far did they get into plotting the cricket stuff for Doctor Who? Because in Doctor Who, it's supposed to be the Time Lords only have a certain number of regenerations
Mm.
total, and then they're done. So that could have been an errant line that they kept in there for some reason. But I like the idea that it could be like you get 42 reincarnations maybe in this world instead.
because he goes on about being a fly, and then obviously, like, he was, he was a rabbit, he was
Quite a few
some,
things.
yeah, he was quite
I
a lot.
did.
He like started naming them all to him, and he was just like, I don't know what you're on about. I'm sorry.
I liked the rabbit idea though because of the fact that he had that rabbit skin bag from the cavemen times, and at least that was bringing it back a little bit to like where we had been before, even if it wasn't like necessarily moving that plot along. But I thought that was interesting.
Mm.
I think with the prehistoric stuff, it really bugged me how we, like, on the end of the last one, as we said earlier, it kind of just stops. Like the last chat as well, it just stops. There wasn't like an ending to the book, just stopped. And we had just got here, and then it was like literally like 2 pages and being like, oh, well, they left. And I was like, what?
Hmm.
What do you mean? Like, you've ended it on that part where it wasn't even like a proper ending to just get rid of it all. And it, as I know you've said already in this live, I feel like, well, Ren mentioned it specifically. I feel like he does a lot of stuff off the page,
Hmm.
and then you're
Mm.
just kind of they're like, well, what's actually happened here? Like, what is happening? Like, I want to know this stuff, and you're just not giving it to me.
Yeah, I really wanted to know, especially after book 2. Like the only part I really liked about book 2 was like the ending and how it brought it back to 42 and Earth and all that kind of stuff. And so because of the way it ended, I thought, oh, it's going to start right back up in book 3, but there's no big plot arc in these books, which I do agree with. It's so annoying. Like that's the one thing I'm really missing. But instead of being like, here, let's just continue, it's literally 4 years later. Ford has been gone for so long that Arthur thinks he's dead, and then within, like you said, a couple pages, it's like they're not even on Earth anymore. Like we don't get any resolution about the prehistoric people and the people that came from other planets. I think they said that they died off or something, but like again, it never really got into anything. Like Arthur just doesn't care about a lot of stuff, so we don't get that information, which is annoying.
Mm.
Typical white man, just not caring about the important things.
I
So
think
true.
I know we haven't touched on it yet, but
Mm.
I feel like Ford wasn't very Fordy, if that makes sense. He just seemed really not
Yeah.
himself in this book.
He's hard for me to put my finger on, but I think I agree with you.
Mm.
He just seemed so down and just being like, I do not care about anything. And he didn't have this like fun spirit,
He turned
which
into Arthur. In the audiobook, I kept thinking when he was talking, it was
Yeah.
Arthur instead. That was, at least me, that's how it felt to me. He didn't feel like himself anymore, and that's what it was. It felt like he was more taking on what Arthur used to be like, just sort of like, things are happening, whatever. I don't know why that was the
So true.
choice. Arthur's bag kept getting replaced, and I don't know if there was even a resolution to that. Maybe I missed it, but it didn't seem to tie back to anything. I think
It doesn't go back to
we're
anything.
agreeing right now. I don't think it does. I think the only thing that I can think of that made the bag semi-important, and again, not even necessarily important because it's so random, but he sees like a bag that he left at an airport and learns to fly because and
Yeah.
like flying comes back like one other time, which I thought the flying aspect was interesting, but also a little bit too long-winded. Like it just felt like it took forever
Mm,
to get to that like party in the sky.
mm,
But I thought it was interesting how like the concept of flying worked, and I knew it was going to come back at some point.
For me, with that scene, you know, I don't know if you really remember, but Arthur puts like a tie around his towel around his face, so he can't see when he's like up this high, and he's just like edging along the side of a building, and I'm like, let's be honest here. What wouldn't happen? You wouldn't go, oh, I'm going to go across like a big long building in the middle of nowhere. Let's like make myself blind. And I was like, this is just starting to feel too unbelievable. Like, I know that it's science fiction. I know that, like, obviously it's not going to feel like exactly real, but it just felt ridiculously unreal. So I was just kind of like, this isn't even drawing me in as much anymore. And I just kind of was getting a little bit bored with that. And then inside the party, I was like, okay, it's going to be something fun. And it was just kind of they have fights. They don't have fights. Oh, they want more alcohol. And I was like, okay, what's this really got to do with anything? Like, I feel like so much of it could have been cut out. And it was only for this guy's award. And it was like, as soon as we
Mhm.
had that leave, they were gone. And I was kind of like, I feel like it's so long-winded to get to the point of what we're trying to get to.
Well, and I think that potentially comes in with what Ren was saying, where it was harder to tell that this book had a plot. And I think it's because the only plot was them trying to find these little things that they needed to stop the robots. But in between getting each one, it seems like it took forever because, like, the one that they needed that was, I don't know, silver or whatever it was at the party. And so we have this whole explanation of these generations of people at this party. Like they literally live at the party. They're born at the party. They're probably like inbred. I think they mentioned that. Um, and that's like all it is. It's this whole thing to get to that one piece. And so it does take forever. One thing I wanted to mention also is, and this is another thing that I found out recently, and I don't know if it was somebody that mentioned it in the thing or not, the Discord, but there are two different versions of this third book. There's a UK version and a US version. Because in the
oh,
original, or actually even now, the US version is censored. They wouldn't let him put fuck in the book.
I don't
So
wow.
even remember that word being there, and I have the UK edition.
it's supposed to be there, from my understanding, and this is according to the Hitchhiker's wiki and like Wikipedia and stuff. Mine says Belgium. It's part of the award. It's the award for using Belgium in a
Oh, yeah,
serious screenplay. In the UK, it's
it's
not Belgium.
singular. Yeah, it is. It's changed over to fuck for that one.
Well, and that's the original. The
Yeah.
US publishers changed it to Belgium. And so because of that, there's more text in the US one explaining Belgium, and basically explaining that Belgium is the worst word in the entire universe, and it's so bad that nobody is ever allowed to use it ever unless it's in a serious screenplay. And according to Wikipedia, like it's probably not like a ton, but at least a couple paragraphs, because he was forced to censor the word fuck in the book and use a different word instead. He just picked a random word, but then he added in those paragraphs to say that Belgium is an even worse word in the rest of the universe, to say that like you made me change it, but this word's even worse, even though it's not. So like he added a little bit of commentary to the book. So yeah, my book had a whole thing about Belgium.
Wow. That's so
Yeah.
interesting. I did not pick up on that.
Well,
Which
I don't think
edition do
you
you have
would.
then?
I don't know. It was just the one that's on Spotify.
Okay, so I think it depends on where you are, because I think it was Jasper that mentioned, so in the Discord, they were reading physically and using an audiobook, and their physical book
Mm.
has the normal stuff, but the audiobook is the US version, because I guess Martin Freeman did both versions.
Okay.
So you could get it either way. I guess it just depends. I think they're in the US, and so their library system is the US one. And so they had mentioned that they were reading it both ways, and at one point the audiobook just kept going, but the text didn't. And it's because they had the US version of the audio, but must have had like the original text, which I think is like, I guess, just the UK text for the actual book. And I just thought that was interesting, the fact that they were like, Douglas Adams is made to censor the book, and it's still censored today. But because of that, decided to use a whole nother word and add in a whole nother like aside to say that this is actually the worst word. And the only people that don't realize it's the worst word in the whole universe is this tiny little planet that doesn't understand that this is the worst word.
I wonder how people from Belgium thought about that.
That would be very interesting. I think in the actual Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy wiki, not Wikipedia, there was some comments and stuff. I guess that there was like some Monty Python stuff around the same time that were like making fun of Belgians because they were voted like the most boring country or something. So that's probably why Douglas Adams
Okay.
picked Belgium as the word, but I
Okay.
don't know for sure because they were comments on a wiki. But I just thought it was interesting that, like,
Mm.
yeah, the US version and the UK version are not the same, because apparently back in the 70s or whenever this was written, the US did not want the word fuck in the book.
Look how far you've come.
Yes. Oh, I say it all the time. I probably am going to have a kindergartner who goes to school and says it.
Well,
That'll be
just
fun.
Belgium. It's all like Belgium.
Belgium. They're going to be like, yes, you know some countries. Um, what else do we have? Oh, we have the guy that was given the truth serum, which I thought was interesting. It was just so far into the book that they got so much of it. They had to say the truth and nothing about the truth about the entire universe, on and on and on. But then by the time they get there, he's done.
I love the fact that they
Of
locked
course.
him up. They literally put him like in a room and then bricked up the walls and then put him in like a big metal cage so that no one could hear him. And I was like, that's a bit excessive. Like, it's a
Apparently,
bit
they don't
much.
want to know about the truth. Yeah, I mean, I guess I liked the idea of that, but now I'm thinking we're never gonna get the answer or the question to the life, the universe, and everything, because he does mention that you are never able to have the answer and the question at the same time in the same universe. And we already know what the answer is. The answer's 42. So the whole book was just to tell us that we will never know.
I feel like that was the epilogue, and I just felt like it was so different from the rest of the book. It felt like it was like a mini, like, short story because it was still about 11, 12 pages,
Hmm.
which for Douglas Adams, I feel like is a lot. So I feel like it was like a mini short story that was just slightly something different that they've just kind of put into the end. But it was the fact that he was then just like, oh, Arthur! And then like his eyes were like wide. And I'm like, what about Arthur though? Because we don't really find out, really. But I did
No.
think the part at the end was really funny where he's like trying to tell him where to go. And it's just like him being like, wait, where? Give me a second, say that one more time for me. Because I was like, that is so me to be like, I'm
Oh
sorry,
yeah.
you're gonna have to repeat that like one more time. And then he dies before he can finish it because it's just like, I can't pick this up. I was like, that is so me. Because I'd be there like, the aware of what now? Like, too much info at once.
I have to say also, with only listening to this on audio, there's a lot of names and stuff that Douglas Adams has made up that I feel the same way as Arthur. I'm like, can you say that again? Because I did not like. How do I spell that? I don't know. I didn't look at it, so I have no idea. But yeah, I think the epilogue was his way of trying to tie in the first book in the series. Oh, well, we are talking about the answer to life, universe, and everything. And then we have a little bit of that because, yeah, this. third book, again, just felt completely different than everything else.
It's like he finally remembered that he was making a series, not just a single book.
Yeah. Well, then again, wasn't it? Yeah, it was based on the radio play, which I know Mel has said and has listened to, I'm pretty sure, because I know I haven't. And then it was obviously supposed to be a trilogy because it was always billed as a trilogy. And then it turned in 4 books and then it turned into 5 books. So, I mean, like, there had to have been something somewhere where he eventually got to a point where he's like, okay, I hope, or at least hopefully, I know where this is going to go. So I'm hoping we get a little bit more in the next one, or at least get back to stuff that happens in the movie so I at least understand what's going on. I feel like that movie gave me a lot of context of what was going on in book 1, and I haven't understood a lot since then.
It feels
Do
like
you think your rating would be different if you hadn't watched the movie?
So because the movie is only book 1, I originally gave book 1 4 stars, and I do think having seen the movie and having it pretty close to the book, it did help me understand. So I do think potentially if I was reading this without having seen the movie, 4 stars is probably generous. If I had not seen the movie, I don't think it would be the case. And so, like, yeah, Restaurant, I think I gave a really low 3. Like, it could have been verging on like a 2-ish, maybe. I hardly ever give 2.5. So that just feels weird. But it had some stuff that I did like. I liked the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy stuff. I liked the certain aspects of, like, when they did land on the planet, which we now know did nothing, but when they landed there and it, like, sort of tried to bring it back to the 42 and, like, Earth and that kind of stuff, like, I felt like we were getting a little bit of something. So there was stuff I liked and stuff I didn't. And then I gave this one a 3.5 because it's just like, it just barely felt better than Restaurant to me. And I think it was only because it actually had at least a semblance of a plot, which, again, we all know is not a ton. But I do also think the movie helped book 1 at least. And that's why I'm really, really hoping there's more in book 4 and 5 that tie into the movie, because there's, like, we go to, like, a whole nother planet in the movie that has never really been touched upon. We get information about Zaphod and, like, his 2-head brain situation that we still have not fully gotten in this series yet, because he basically was not in book 3. But, like, I felt like we got a little bit of, like, what was behind that in the movie. Maybe not as much as I would have liked, because that was still, like, okay, whatever. And then we also had a whole nother thing that ended up being around the supercomputer, but it could have been maybe they just brought it into that area for the movie because they didn't want to go to another planet. But it was, again, completely opposite of going there and figuring out that the mice were running things. So, like, there's at least, like, 2 to 3 bigger plot points I feel like the movie had and made important that we haven't actually got in this book series yet. And so, like, I'm holding out hope that it wasn't just stuff they made up for the movie and it's actually from something and it's going to tie into stuff. I'm hoping. I'm probably going to be very, very let down. I should stop hoping.
Yeah, probably.
Look for the worst, and then if they do give it to me, I'll be happy. I won't.
I think I'm the same. In all honesty, I think the movie really helped me with book 1. And if it wasn't, I know this is going to sound bad, but if it wasn't for, like, this, like, read along, I probably would give up on the, like, series.
So true. Yeah.
I was going
Like,
to say Ren's probably the exact same way.
I feel like I need something more in 4 and 5 because, like, I'm not someone who likes to DNF books or, like, series. I'm not someone who likes to get rid of my books. But, like, in all honesty, I'm probably going to get rid of my book after like the series. I do not see myself rereading it, and it's such a big book. It's nice, like, to bind up, and I'm like, I just, it takes up so much space. But I'm just sort of, like, to that point where I'm like, I'm just bored. Like, nothing's connecting. I feel like the characters are becoming even more 2-dimensional with every single book, and it's just feeling it's not hitting the spaces anymore. Like, at least book 1, everyone had, like, their own personalities. Book 2, we basically got rid of Trillian. we basically had like near enough no Marvin. This book we basically got rid of Ford. I'm like,
And Zaphod, he was barely in this one either. Like
I'm
it
like,
was, they're cutting them
like
out.
except from Arthur, who's left. Like, what are they going to do to Arthur in the next one? Because at this point, I'm going to be like, he has no personality in book 4 at this point because it's just feeling that way. But at least we got Flaherty back. So I was like, okay, at least we have one character from the earlier books, sort of making a return. But I feel like I'm just getting bored.
Yeah, I did like that Slarty Bartfast came back because at least it brought something back from the first one. So that again is giving me a little bit of hope for later in the series. I mean, we only have 2 books left, but like something coming back. But I also agree that if I wasn't doing this read along, I probably would have stopped. I mean, I literally read book 1 and book 2, I think back to back, like within a month or 2 of each other. 2 to 3 years ago. Like I think it was maybe 2020. Like I was like, "Oh, I'm going to read this whole thing cuz I love the movie." I got 2 books in, didn't like Restaurant that much and gave up. So this is my second time trying. We're going to get through it somehow. And I feel I don't know, I sort of feel bad because Mel loves it so much, but
Same.
everybody else seems to be struggling. And
Yeah.
I love this for her, but at the same time, like, and I'm sure she's gonna
Like,
watch
I
this
don't
back later.
understand.
She's sick right now, so I feel bad. But like, I'm sorry, Mel. You tried so hard.
To be
Like,
fair,
I
it would have
really
just
just
sat on
want
my
to
shelf.
ask her, like, why?
And I mean, I don't know. Maybe, like she said before, she always reads these back to back. Maybe there is
Mm,
something about actually doing that because, like, the audiobooks, at least for me, don't take too long. Like, it's something that probably could be done. Maybe it's a humor thing. Maybe I'm just not 100%, or not even just me,
mm,
multiple of us getting
mm,
exactly what it is. But I know, like I said, and I think Jasper said, we liked this book a little bit more. And I know Mel said that like the beginning is a little bit rough, and I think like the restaurant, especially for some of us, was a little bit rough. And so I am just really
mm,
hoping that this was supposed to be something that instead of making it a whole tome, they did sort of cut up a little bit. And it is a little bit weird, but maybe he did get to that point where he brings things together in book 4 and book 5, and we just didn't quite, we're not there yet, which for me, the ending does not save a book. Like,
no.
there's always those people that are like, but if you would have just read to the end, you would love it. And I'm just like, I will DNF. And if I don't like something, I will DNF. And I'm never that person that's like, oh, well, if I would have read to the end, that ending would have saved. Like, you can't save a whole experience for me by just the end. So I am hoping it
Mhm.
gets there, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to save it for me. It's not going to be a favorite series.
I think across the board
Sorry,
for me,
Mel.
except from the first one, it's been 3 stars. Because I'm pretty sure
Mm,
Restaurant was 3 stars. This one was 3 stars. I actually preferred Restaurant to this one
okay.
a little bit more.
Mm,
I think it was just the dry humour that was
There was
in
more.
Restaurant that I liked a little bit more, whereas this one, it just, I don't know if it's because I basically read it all in one sitting. I read like over half the book in like one sitting today, and I don't know whether I'm just like, oh, it's just too much, too fast, or what, but I'm just kind of like, oh, I don't know. I feel like it's sort of going down a little bit in terms of how I'm actually rating it, because I'm like 4. Okay, this one's like a 3, but it's like a higher 3, and then like this one's like a low 3.
Mm,
Like it's just slowly going downwards for me, and I'm like, I don't like that very much. I like it either to be like all sort of level or be like going
yeah.
up, or at least like I'm fine with like little dips, but
Mhm.
not like the steady decline that's currently happening.
No, I think that's something that a lot of people should, I would hope for, look for in a series. Like if you're reading a series, I would expect everything to sort of just go up. Maybe
mm,
start pretty well and have a slight dip at that sequel, because sometimes you just get that like slower sequel because they need to like really build for the other stuff. But you never want to just see like a steady decline. That just, by the time I get to to that point, I usually just like stop reading. I had a series that I was rereading this year that I like, but I realized as I was rereading it, that I had a decline with it. Like book 1 was a 4, book 2 is like a 3.5, book 3 was like a 3, and I was like, and I already know that book 4 is my least favorite in the whole series, so I just didn't read it. I was like, yeah, I was doing a whole reread. Nah, I DNF my reread. Didn't need to do that.
One thing we haven't
That's
touched
so
on is the
fair.
robot. I know we talked on like the Cricketeers part, but we never really touched on like the robots. I thought they were quite interesting. I actually initially thought when it was like your leader sort of thing near the end, when they were like, who's like looking after robots? I genuinely thought it was going to be Zaphod at that point because they just were not killing
Yeah.
him, but they were killing everyone else. And I was like,
Mm.
well, he secretly somehow ended up like a cult leader here because if so, that would
That
make
would have been
so
more
much sense.
interesting.
It would have. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
I don't remember much about those right now.
I think I just
Like book
remember that they were constantly described as being very white. I was like,
Very
okay,
I
I
white.
get
think
it.
we're talking about like the actual robots that were going out and trying to get stuff, right? Because like they were the ones that were killing a
The
lot
ones
of
that were
people
just
to get
killing
their
everybody.
huh?
The ones that were just killing everybody. Their
Yeah.
whole entire goal was just to
I
kill the
think
whole universe.
I think the reason they were white is because they were supposed to be like cricketers, like in cricket uniforms.
Mm.
Like the planet was called Cricket, and they have a wicket, and
I guess it
Rhyming!
goes back to that like um, repetitive thing that you're talking about, Ashley, where it's like, okay, you've told me that they're white. I get it. You don't have to tell me 50 more times. Like, I got it the first time. And he just kept like repeating how white they were.
I had to actually use a bookmark at one point because literally the line just kept repeating itself like a paragraph. And I had to double check I wasn't just reading the same line. So I was like, right, here's my bookmark. Just slowly move it down so I can make sure that I am actually reading other lines. It was just that repetitive at some points when I was like, if I have to get a bookmark to check that I'm on the right sentence, that's a bit too repetitive at that point. Like I should be able to kind of tell the difference in what I'm reading.
yeah, it's like when you first start learning to read and you have to like put your finger with every single word.
Yeah.
I think I like the concept of like what happened in this book, and I would like the cricketers if it wasn't a Hitchhiker's book. Like if someone else wrote this and like it was just about like these robots, I'd be like, cool, that sounds fun. But I just so much don't like everything else that's happening that like any charm that it could have just gets lost.
There was a,
Understandable.
there was a whole part with Arthur that I just didn't understand. So like he's like by himself and then he just appears somewhere else. I'm like, I'm really confused how you're just appearing places. Like it was like, okay, so you have the sofa, and then he ended up somewhere else, and then he ended up somewhere else, and then he ended up somewhere else. I'm like, but how are you getting places? Like, how are you? I don't
Mm,
understand because nothing's tying up.
I
Like,
think the sofa was supposed to be the vessel for going places, and we did not get an explanation for that. I don't know anything else about it, but I feel like that was what was supposed to be, but they didn't explain it well enough.
that kind of just goes back to what Ren said. There's so much stuff off the paper that we
Hmm.
actually need on the
On
page
paper.
that
Yeah.
we can actually
mm,
understand and have a better understanding. Like, I know these are meant to be short books, but in all honesty, if they were like 200 pages or like 50 pages more, whatever, but they gave us that little bit more explanation on not
mm.
waffling, but the actual, like, what's happening, I would appreciate that. Not just
Hmm.
50 more pages of waffle. I
Yeah, take
couldn't.
out all of the extra waffling, add in stuff on page, develop the characters more, make it an actual like 300-page book, and have a through plot line from book 1 to book 5.
Be
New
so
favorite
much
right
better.
there. And make Trillian the main character. Okay, so whenever the copyright comes out for Hitchhikers, we need somebody to redo it. May
Well,
make
Kirsty
her
is
the main
doing
character.
NaNoWriMo in May. Someone could write it then.
I love that we're all literally just like, see if you just fix the whole thing.
If you just take
Like-
everything about this book, throw it out the window.
And we'll redo it and it'll be fine. Just, key points. That's it. But when you said take out the waffle, I was like, if you take out all the waffle, it's probably like 25 pages of book. Like, there's really not much actually happening.
And I'm over here now trying to check when the copyright expires for Hitchhikers. When can people publish? Because what was it? Great Gatsby just came into the public domain like last year or the year before. So like so many Great Gatsby books had come out.
It's usually, I know for music, it went from 50 years to 75. So I'm probably going to say between 50 and 75.
Yeah, 1979 is when it was published. So like it's going to probably still be a little while.
What did you do?
That sucks.
50 years after the death of the creator, potentially, or at least that's what the copyright used to be. But then thanks to Disney, it keeps getting pushed back.
What did you do?
So it's possible that you can extend them again. So it looks like, who knows? I didn't get any exact answer on that, but that would be great. Okay, or like I said, fan fiction. I need to start looking up some stuff where Trillian's the main character. I mean, I did like I said, that she solved the whole supercomputer thing in this one. So at least it felt like she was the smart one. Like she solved that last sort of thing at the end. Like she caught on before I caught on to what was going on. But that was really all she did. She needed more to be a real character, but I liked that was more of a thing than what she did in Restaurant. I just need her to be a main character. I wish, and I want her to be a main character like her description in book 1, where she is like darker skinned and wears like a head wrap and stuff. Like I want that character to be the main character.
I really didn't like how they kind of made her feel a bit like a bimbo sort of way with Thor. Because it was literally just there, just like, oh, I'm hitting on Thor now. Like, I'm going with Thor. And then it was like Arthur like proper having to try and fight Thor. And I was like, what's this got to do with anything? Like,
that's the other thing. I forgot about that until you mentioned it. The fact that Arthur was like making her feel like his property. Like if she wants to really go flirt with Thor, she can. But he was like, "This is for your own good. You can't flirt with Thor. Come with us." And I'm just like, "What?" And then does she thank him later? I'm like, "Excuse me." I did not like that part.
I just felt like it wasn't needed. It didn't add anything.
No, it wasn't. You're right. But at the same time, I did not also need the man to go tell her that she can't go flirt. She didn't need to either, but like I didn't need him to try and be that person.
The only part I did like was the fact that they were like, well, there is a party on Valhalla. And I was just like, at least that's a tiny bit of like actual, like...
Yeah, it's called Ragnarok. It's probably not going to end well.
Yeah. I was like, oh, well, at least we got a tiny bit of like lore for something else. But then it was just kind of like, oh, okay, that was just a nice little tidbit, but still didn't add anything.
I almost wish that was more too, because I'm trying to figure out if this whole like bag switching thing, if it is more than just a random thing, is it like a multiverse thing? Is that the reason that the couch thing kept happening? Like and again, I don't want to give too much credit to this author who we do not know if he can actually pull it off. But I almost feel like Valhalla and like Norse gods and the fact they actually have like a multiverse sort of thing going with it. Like I sort of would like that. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, if that was the intention or not. But it would explain some of the very, very weird couch hopping into different places and the reason the bag keeps switching. Like if somehow they're in this like weird middle space that's not exactly our universe. But again, I don't know.
I mean, that would tie into another bit of the book where it does say about the different tiers. You've got like the very high tier, and then it has like the middle tier. So like going off of what you're saying, that would actually add into that part really well, if that is something. I just don't believe it is, because at this point, I just don't believe Douglas Adams really had a rough idea of what he was doing. He was just like, "This is a book."
Well, and see, I would love to be wrong and have that actually be what's tying in everything, but I just don't think it's going to happen. Looks like we've had some other people saying hi to Presley and joining us, so thank you so much. And yes, don't forget to hit that like button if you are still here. I would love for it to be a multiverse thing, and we just somehow, like, there's little hints maybe, and we just haven't gotten to like the actual reveal yet. But at the same time, I almost feel like in a book series, you would expect more foreshadowing or a reveal sooner than like either book 4 or book 5. You know what I mean? Like if this is actually supposed to be a thing that we're experiencing. So like I want to hope, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
I think for me as well, it doesn't end on any sort of cliffhanger. So it doesn't give anything to even what the next book will even be, because
Yeah.
it just kind of ends so nicely. Being like, okay, so he had truth serum, okay. And now it's just kind of like, I guess the cliffs, but then he just told them that it has a message. And I'm like,
Yeah.
is that what the next one's going to be about? But with Douglas Adams, I'm like, it's probably never going to be mentioned again. So I'm like,
Yeah, I feel like this could have been the whole, like, because it does say it's like a trilogy or whatever. This could have been where it ended, and I think we all would have been like fine with that not continuing. Maybe like again, not that it was going to affect our rating. Obviously, this is not like the best book we've ever read. But yeah, there's no hint or indication that there's supposed to be more after this necessarily. Whereas like book 2, when it ended, I thought there was going to be a whole bunch more leading into prehistoric Earth and what the actual answer and question to the universe was because of how it ended. This one ends more on like almost like a nicer ending, like a let you down easier where you're not expecting more. So I have no idea where we're going to go next. Like it feels like it could be anything. Okay. Oh my goodness, kids. Do we have anything else that we want to talk about? I feel like everything that I remembered that I wanted to talk about, we hit. So if
I don't
nobody
think
else
of
has
anything
any.
else to mention, like
Okay,
personally.
and you were the one that read the book most recently, so I feel like you were keeping us on track with some of the smaller stuff that were interesting that I completely forgot. So, okay,
That's what I can do. I
well,
can just finish it on the day every single time. To be like,
I
cram read
mean,
it.
they're short enough, but I would get so much anxiety trying to be like down to the wire reading it. But yeah, so next one is called So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. So I think we're all hoping for dolphins based on the
I
movie.
know. I know that on the cover of some of them, I've got like the big bind up. I was taking a look at just like what the cover was, and it did have
Mhm.
dolphins, and I'm like, I
Well,
can't wait for dolphins.
I know my spine on this one has the dolphins here, and then I do think it probably has, you're in my way, dude, one of the other like pictures that might have dolphins too, because it's like the older covers in this one.
Mine just comes up white with like black text to say it's the next book. That's like it. Don't even get extra pictures or anything.
Well, here, I've never even looked at this one. Yeah, there's dolphins. This is the
Ooh.
cover of a mine. So we got that. But I'm going to assume if we keep everything the same and we do it like the last weekend of the next month, we're looking at like April 27th, 28th, depending on time zone. So for anybody
Yep.
that is watching us right now, that's probably what we're going to do. But we will also post in the Discord when we have everything fully figured out and whose channel and all that as well. So I think
We
we'll
have
probably end it
Ash
here.
and Ren left.
We do actually have Ash and Ren left. So you guys can duke it out in the Discord to see who gets to do what.
Yeah, we'll figure that out sometime
We
throughout the
will.
month.
Okay, well then I think we will just say thank you everybody for joining us today. We will get to book 4 next month. So thank you everybody
Yes.
for showing up.